Okay, so the only thing you need to know about me is it's all about fun. So that's what we're going to have today. But I'm here from the cities, have a market research company, founded it almost 30 years ago, have sold it 4 years ago to a company, Padilla CRT, and while we're a division of Padilla. And so we work predominantly with Fortune 200 companies, helping them understand one of three things. One of them is, we call it customer check, and that's how do we keep the customers that we've worked so hard to get. So it could be satisfaction research, it could be net promoter research, it could be things like experience mapping to keep them through that precious journey. The second thing we do for customers is we call it competitor check, and that is how do we differentiate ourselves from the competition. And a third area where companies come to us and they say, Jeri, we need the next generation product or service. The offer is called innovator check, and it's anything from concept testing to commercialization of a product within itself. So that's a little bit about SMS Research Advisors, but I'm here because of you. And what that means is I want you to have the best experience you can have. And so I know two things. I know one, I think one of the reasons you come here is for the topic. But the second reason I think you come here is for the experience to meet other people. And so in doing that, we sit all over the place when we come to presentations. But I'm going to help your journey immediately to help you meet new people. So I'm going to ask everybody to take, if you have them, 2 business cards. This is about understanding the journey. We're starting your journey already. You're going to take those 2 business cards and you're going to go meet 2 people in the room you don't even know. You're going to introduce yourself, say, hi, whatever. And then we'll begin the presentation. But I want to begin your journey. I know one of the reasons you're here is to network. Anybody not here because they want to meet other folks? They'd like to network?
I don't like people.
Yeah, I know. Jack hates people, and that's why I'm forcing him to do this. But I do market research. I've done market research for Penn, and we know one of the top 2 reasons people come to these meetings is they want to network. They want to meet other individuals that they never else would have the opportunity. So I'm going to start our journey, way up front. One of the mapping exercises is why do you come? Looking at what makes a difference, why you go one place versus another. 5 minutes max. 5 minutes max. 2 people, 2 cards. Must share. Let's do it. Jeri Meola.
I'm Kathy.
Kathy, it's a pleasure. Here you go. Tell me about your business.
Well, I work for Mayo Clinic's internal management consulting service.
Okay.
And actually I came because I'm the local chair for the American College of Healthcare Executives programs, and we're trying to figure out how to make this, well, just the things you talk about, how to make the best experience possible.
Well, we'll get into it and have you see it. And excellent. If you like this and want me to come over and speak to the group, it's an open invitation for free.
Awesome.
So
yeah, no, it's an interesting experience. Where the chapter is in the Twin Cities, so you wouldn't have to go very far.
So if you need help with it after you see this, let's do it. Let's keep people making that experience what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's because I'm going to talk about the battlefield and what it looks like today. So we'll go from there. But thank you for coming. Appreciate it. This can be exciting. All righty, thank you. All right, I'll give you about 30 more seconds. If you haven't met two people by now.
Our card, which is okay.
Oh, okay, here.
My card.
Okay, all right, got it. You want this one back?
Couldn't have her card.
There you go.
But I want this.
There you go. Very good. All righty. Hey, good morning. I'm Jeri.
Hi, Jeri. I'm Julie Guskey here.
And Julie, what do you do?
I do have another card here. I consult myself.
Okay.
And I help organizations lift performance or individuals. But I also have a market research background, so I used to work in market research firms.
Oh, where at?
Yeah. So I worked for Questar. I worked for something called Business Dynamics.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so now you're out on your own, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, you're going to love this.
I am.
All right. All right, team, we're ready to go. We're ready to go, team. Thank you. Thank you. We're ready to go. Okay, so that was the first phase of journey mapping if you're doing around an experience of why one makes a buy decision. And what we just completed was the first leg of awareness. I just asked you to become aware of the people around you, and they told you some about content. And so when I do this presentation, I'm going to show you the different types of journey mapping that exist, but this one was all about the purchase process. Didn't everybody go through? What'd you talk about? Hi, who are you? What do you do? And so what I just did was the first step. They told you a little bit about content. I don't know how satisfied you were, and I don't know how important it was what the people had to sell you, and I don't know how easy they made it for you to understand what they're doing, but I just took you through step one of a type of journey mapping. So in beginning this presentation, I want to tell you this first and foremost. Post-it notes. Journey mapping is really all about Post-it notes. So if you know someone who works at our friendly company 3M, get to know them very well because they get them cheaper than anybody else. But you're going to need lots of Post-it notes. Made in Minnesota, we're keeping a Minnesota business going. Isn't that exciting? All right. I want to start off this and ask everybody, when you see this, what does this say to you? This is a bottle of Chardonnay. It has different things on that. When you go shopping, you might see something like this. What does this mean to you? When you think about it, it's all about the customer experience. You're the consumer. You're going to go purchase this bottle of wine. What does that say to you? How many of you understand that? Go ahead. What's it say?
It's got really good ratings from a couple of wine publications, Wine Spectator.
Other things it says to you.
There's 39 reviews. It's got, 4.5 stars, so there's people who put out reviews, went to the effort of writing a review.
Okay. Others, what it says.
Tell me the type of wine and what I could experience, a rich and creamy type flavor profile.
Yeah, good. Got the experience there? Go ahead.
It's telling me it's high quality, but I see at the bottom, view more. I can learn more about it if it's something that excites me, that I can research and network and go see what else they do.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a very basic thing. It tells us where it's from.
Absolutely, which might leave an impression. Anything else this slide tells you? All right, so the reason I put this up here is when you think about, it's all about the customer experience. The customer experience is you have to manage expectations. That's why one does journey mapping. But let me add something else to this. What did I just add to this? But what kind of perspective?
Compared to exactly that of quality versus price, and also the branding, where they've come from.
That's exactly right. And what I just added was something about value. But the reason I took you through that and added price to it is when you think about doing journey mapping, when you think about any customer experience you put through, if you pay X for something, how do you know what to expect for that X? So if I go out and I buy a dozen pencils and I pay $57 for those, and there's one other pencils I could pay that say are like $60, I have to know what is the experience somebody wants for $57 versus someone $60, and I have to make sure they're getting the experience they expect for what they're paying. And so I showed you this because this is people trying to tell you the experience about it already through numbers, through getting endorsements, through like the Wine Spectator or Wine World, but all of a sudden you're thinking about the element of where price comes into it. A lot of times when individuals start off journey mapping, they start out putting this whole experience together, but they never think about the element of, well, are we making sure the customer is getting what they paid for, so we're giving them that financial experience. My message to you in thinking about this, because everybody runs into journey mapping and forgets way up front to start to think about, well, wait a second, they're paying something for this. How do we make sure they're getting the experience they deserve for what they're paying? What that means to us is you have to think about journey mapping before you ever even begin it in saying, does one shoe going to fit for all? What I don't want you to do is think about this as an exercise where we're just going to use all those Post-it notes and it's going to be equivalent for everybody across the board, because different customers are going to have different experiences based upon what they want to pay. And so you're going to see on every journey mapping chart, I'm going to show you something that looks at personas, segments, how do they differ. There is no such thing unless your business is very, very, just stagnant of one journey map is going to fit everybody's experience. It's not going to happen. And so when I started this off and had you go through it and meet everybody, did you expect the experience to be the same for everybody you talked about? Certainly not. Certainly not. And going from there. Oh, let's have some fun. The Ryder Cup just ended in town. How many of you went to the Ryder Cup? Boy, did it have a lot of experiences. This is called a wuzzle. How many of you golf? For you, even if you don't golf, a wuzzle is a picture that tells you something. What does this say? Who was the first to say it? Right here. 2 under par. Now, what you get is a bottle of wine that has one of those numbers on it. Here you go. So you get to decide the experience based upon it is a 90. And going from there. All right, let's have some fun. Let me show you about journey mapping. All right, get ready. Get ready. I'm starting to show you the battlefield. Here is the battlefield of journey mapping. You need to understand these things. First and foremost, 1, 89% of companies, majority of them, expect to complete mostly on the basis of the customer experience by 2016 versus 36% 4 years ago. If it's not about the customer experience, I don't know what it is about anymore. Everybody's looking at it as what is the differentiator. That's why we do journey mapping. Number 2, what's happening in the battlefield? This is an unbelievable number. poor customer experiences result in 83 billion, not million, loss. Because what you do is you defect and abandon purchases. How many of you have had an experience and you walk out of a store? You just say, I'm not going to shop there anymore. That store didn't do a very good job of understanding what the customer experiences are going to be. Defections are happening all the time.
So you've been to Best Buy?
Have you, Jack, been to Best Buy?
It's been a while.
What's happened?
Wasn't
Wasn't
the best experience.
the best experience. But see, now you got the word of mouth part of journey mapping already. How many people did he just tell? And you're dying to know, what are you talking about?
They know.
They know, and going from there. Okay, we as consumers, power has grown. We now believe more than ever recommendations from friends. He's now a friend. Somebody met him earlier, and family. While only 19% are trusting direct communication. Where's a lot of that direct communication coming from? Social media. How many of you trust everything on social media? Not many. Not many. So that's where journey mapping comes in. The last part about the battlefield. Here's what's happening. We will pay more for a better customer experience. Remember that wine chart? If you knew exactly what the experience was, different between a 93 and a 91, remember I talked about price comes into it? You, in fact, will consciously pay more. It's not even an unconscious feeling, emotion. You will pay more for that experience. That's why when I show you journey mapping, I'm going to show you there are multiple types of experiences you want to look at and when it's most appropriate to use them. All right, any questions about the battlefield? Anybody want to talk about a good experience? Jack said there was a bad. What was a good experience where you believe the company did a nice job of managing your expectations?
Quick Trip.
Quick Trip. What happens at Quick Trip?
Consistently high quality, good experience. People feel good when they go to Quick Trip, and when they walk out the door, they feel like the people there cared about them and liked their job and got you in and out. We're interested in your needs as a customer.
Okay, those are all good examples. Anybody else?
I went to Kiel the other day for the first time, and I had no idea. I wanted one item, and of course I had no idea it's a great big store. And so I just asked the first person I saw, and he walked me over to the area, and then had someone from that area right away said, this lady's looking for this, and person from that area said, well, let me show you what we have, and they were just, I was really impressed.
Okay, one more. Go ahead.
Along with that, bicycle sports or Tyrrell ski and sports, which are small businesses of sporting. You come in, they know your name, they take you to what do you need right at the door, right when you walk in. But they make your experience pleasurable right from the start.
Okay, 3 examples. The examples we gave, repeat them on the experiences. So what we heard were 3 experiences that all talked about explicit service elements, how they were treated when they came in, people knew your name, how helpful they were, everything along that perspective. The question I have for you is anybody surprised by any of those experiences when they hear them as examples of what people did that was outstanding? So you would think everywhere you go, service would be great, right? Why do journey mapping? But it's not like that. And what we're looking for, more importantly than anything else, is when you're doing journey mapping, you've got to start looking for areas that are different. But one of the things that I just heard in those 3 examples was nobody talked about standards-based behavior. Nobody said, I loved it because within 30 seconds, they waited on me. You've got to start looking, when you do journey mapping, for areas that take you to standards-based. People have these emotional feelings, which is one type of journey mapping I'm going to show you. But on the other end, do people really know what to expect? Remember I talked about how we're managing expectations? Well, one of the things that's happening is a lot of people are putting journey maps together. They're finding out what's most important. They're finding out level of satisfaction, but they're not finding out the standards of behavior to teach people. And we call that, in the research world, you're going to the tertiary level of behavior. You're taking the time to figure out what is the standard somebody wants. So let's learn a little bit about this topic of journey mapping. All right. You gave me examples. The examples talked about the middle. We have seen in the marketplace this type of question, the customer effort score, is all about how easy it is to do business with you. When you do journey mapping, you always want to have a customer effort score and asking, how easy was this type of experience? And I'm going to show you the numbers between it. But this customer effort score, up until 5 years ago, never really existed. Because people just looked at it and said, I care more about how hard it is to do business with a company than I've ever cared before. Thus, it got translated into a metric called the customer effort score. When you look at this gentleman on the bottom picture, this is about the customer effort score. He is, in fact, telling us something. What is he telling us, that picture? What's that gentleman saying to us? He's frustrated. Now, how might we take this, because this is the shopping experience, part of his journey that he's going through, how might he turn into a satisfied customer?
Someone to open a lineup right next to him?
Possibly.
Is someone to help him or his hands because they're full?
Okay, help him with his hands because they're full. I'm guessing this gentleman ran into the store and said, I just need toilet paper and I need to get out of here. Okay? Neighbor wasn't home. Okay? Couldn't go to neighbor and get it. He had to go to the store. How could they, remember, it's something I just told you. How could they take that? Go ahead.
Well, so he would know how much time it's going to take to get to the front of the line, so they would meet his expectations as far as it's going to take 10 minutes, whatever, so he knows that going on.
That is exactly right. Imagine if the experience they've started to teach is if we have people in line, we don't want them in line for longer than X minutes. So when we do journey mapping, we want to think about this because this is about a specific interaction they had. It's not about making the buy decision of why I went here. It's about a specific element of the store. So by now, when I get there and ask you how many types of journey maps there are, I've given you already 3 examples of different types of journey mapping. There is not just one type of journey mapping, and I'll show that to you. But again, it's starting to take it, and it's all about the customer experience, but how do we get it to where managed behavior and communicating the brand promise around what one can expect in the relationship? Are we rational as customers? Are we rational? Sure we are. Depends on the circumstances. But in general, we're rational if you tell us what to expect, right? We are. But we're irrational when we don't know what to expect. We become that social media channel that says, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, I didn't get that, I'll never go there and do business again. But by nature, we've become irrational because, remember the battlefield numbers? Who's in control? You are. You are in control of what the destiny is of the buy decision. So what is a journey map? I've spent a lot of time talking about it. All it is a visual representation of the journey the customer has through their brand, product, service, and people. How many of you have done journey mapping? So a couple of you have, all right? How do you feel about this definition of journey mapping? Make sense? Okay. How did you do your journey mapping? What kind of journey mapping?
We used it to visualize and lay out the process for our customers, specifically for our youth store, all of the paperwork that was required, when they met with the counselor, the follow-up appointments, all of that was laid out.
That's fantastic. That's part of the customer when a specific area of the business you're journey mapping. Nice job. Okay, what is it? No wine. Ah! Okay.
Colorado, you could have gotten a joint, maybe.
What is not a journey map? A journey map is not a replacement for quantitative efforts, but it's a good starting point. One of the things I see when a lot of companies do journey mapping, I'm going to show you the difference. They mistake journey mapping for process mapping. They say, I'm going to go through and look at what's happening and what we think the customer expects, but guess who they forget to ask? Yes, it's not very good. So it's not a replacement for it. And I'm going to show you the difference between the two so that you don't get in a situation and you say, wow, this is great. Look at this is what the customer, how they're going to go through it within our organization. And they forget to ask the customer. Now, I'm going to share with you something. One of the number one questions I get asked is, how big does a company have to be to do journey mapping? How big does the company have to be to do journey mapping? Big enough to have customers?
Yes, I'm self-employed and just me, and I can do it.
And we've got an example of one. How big do you think the company has to be to do journey mapping? The answer is, if you are out there having customers who interface with your brand, product, services, and people is a singular, you can do journey mapping at the size of a business of 1. There is no rule of thumb that says, we'll only do this if your company is X size, because a business of 1 day may become a business of 2. And when you have team members, when you get to 2 who become most disappointed, why do they become disappointed? What do they say? I didn't know I was supposed to do this. And you're saying, yes, you're supposed to do this because our customer expects X. All right? So that is the rule of thumb. You can begin it at 1. That's what a journey map is. Simplicity. I told you already. There are 3 types of journey maps. There is the journey map where we practiced the purchase decision. You came here and said, hi, I'm so-and-so. How many of you said, why did you come here today? I'm here because of X. That is the first stage of awareness on a journey map about the purchase decision. The second type of journey map, and again, these are all available for everyone, and I'm going to give you examples, is an emotional journey map. I'm going to give you an example of a journey that Xcel Energy went through and how they used emotional mapping. 3, we've already had examples. There's a journey map of a specific company-customer interaction you want to break down. Is there a magic sauce for any which way you do journey mapping? No. It's based upon the business area and what's going to make the most business sense. The purchase decision. When you're doing journey mapping for the purchase decision, what you're paying attention to is up here. See where it has, right here, somewhere? Well, it won't come. All right, top 4 words on the top of the chart: awareness, research, choice reduction, and purchase. When you're doing a journey map about the purchase decision, you're finding out what is the journey someone goes through to find out about us, what's the research they do, how do they narrow their choices, and how long does it actually take the purchase. All these things along the left-hand side of the chart. It talks about phase. What's the goal for it? You see in between, what are all the types of sources they use? So in doing a journey map about purchase decision, you are looking at what are the sources they use, and what's the content most important at each part of the journey. So we have an example there where what people pay attention to when they're making a health insurance purchase decision, what's the size of the employer? That is a source. Within that, you have specific content needs based upon that, which you put on a touch point map. The most important part about putting together your journey map is two things. Is it a touch point or is it a moment of truth? The moment of truth is the most critical interaction that's expected within that journey. And so there's lots of facets of this, but down here I talked about having a customer effort score. You're doing a measurement on that between how satisfied someone is and how important it is, and then you're asking them on a 5-point scale about the effort. And so I'll break this down for you as I show you how to put it together, but this is a big picture of a journey map that is done with the customer. How do we get that data? There's two ways. It's going to be qualitative or quantitative. Remember on the left-hand side, I told you way up front, not one shoe size fits all. There may be multiple journey maps for this and looking at it of different segments. This happens to be real data that Blue Cross Blue Shield did. So internally, they looked at it and said, what's the journey one goes through to select us versus someone else? Second type of journey map. This is a journey map that's based on emotions. What makes this different than anything else? What makes this different is when we look at the content and the touch points, you can see it has the word emotions in it. Now, why was this journey map done? This is a journey map, Excel Energy completed, and the business issue they needed to solve is they wanted more of the youth segment, they called it, to make a buy decision for paying their bill online. They said, we need to change our website to appeal to emotions so that more of the younger segment will pay their bill online. Doesn't mean they had them today, but that was the business issue they were conquering. And they said, we know the steps one goes through. What we don't know is the emotions one feels at each step. So we did emotional mapping. This was done doing qualitative interviews, and what we did was we compared the experience of paying the bill online for Excel versus Comcast. And we said, what were the emotions that the younger family was feeling? Because they had to do it by a like regulated industry type, because they couldn't look at comparing it to Target, because Target's not Excel. So we had to look at a specific industry. So that's how we solved the business issue here. But you see the same types of areas, moment of truth, neutral, so we're looking at what are the touch points. You look at overall satisfaction, what's most important. But most importantly, we look at here and say, this is the way one needs to feel at very early stage. When the bill arrives, the emotion they need to immediately feel is it's easy. When the accuracy of the bill comes through, the emotion they need to feel is passive. And then the third thing they see, ease of understanding the bill, they immediately need to feel confident. Without those types of items, the likelihood of paying their bill online lessens in this segment. But do you know how much money it's worth to have people pay their bill online? Especially if you pay it early. You get a lot of working capital, and that's why this was the business issue they had. Third type of map is the specific company customer interaction. This is when we're going through a process that says, what's the steps I'm going to go through in getting an appointment that does not require blood work? Some of you gave examples of this where they basically said, I'm going to schedule an appointment, I'm going to check in, I'm going to get my physical done and my checkout. You can see below it, it says how long are the expectations for this to take. You can see in the middle, we had experience going through that on this specific customer journey. We had a customer effort score. the information they sought, touch points used in this phase. So across the touch points, all of this had standards-based behavior set to it. So those are the 3 types of journey maps. See on the left, it still has segments to it. On the left, this one happens to have verbatim comments, so that when people look at the journey, they can get a feel for it through verbatims. And that's what that looks like. So that's the 3rd type of journey map. All right, questions at this point? 3 types of maps. I can't tell you which one is right for your company. You have to think about it after you've went through the process of saying what is the business objective. Journey mapping steps. Journey mapping steps go from, you're going to select a journey. Now, sometimes the reason you select a journey is because you know there's issues internally. People are saying, I don't know how we should proceed with this. Sometimes what happens, you select a journey because you've done research and you find out you've got a fail point. You've got an area that's very important in the relationship or we're not differentiating ourselves in that, and so you decide to attack it with journey mapping. If you do it from the internal standpoint, you're going to do research to validate and extend the knowledge. You're going to look at prioritization. You are then going to put the map together. How many maps can any company work on at once? How many?
It's going to vary with not just the size of the company, but you might be doing different ones in different parts of the company.
Absolutely. So it's infinite because businesses, the larger you get, have many more interaction points that you want to look at. Once you do your journey map and you get those answers about importance, satisfaction, customer effort, you might immediately see a quick fix that you can put a Band-Aid on to improve the business, or you might see long-term solutions. But these are the steps you go through. So the first step is internal. The first step, is it always internal? The answer is yes. You want the perspective of the internal infrastructure on the area you're working through. And you can see this is just a simple about thinking about a shared view and the items that impact on these outputs. We're looking at document the steps and resources that process. Here's the customer steps that go through. They just got business with you. They sign a contract. They participate in a kickoff call, email to client, explains, product setup. Look how many different parts of the business that involved. So it wasn't just one area. Do you involve everybody internally in putting the journey map? If they are an interface point with it, the answer is yes. Let them have input into it. But all this does is give you a perspective that you then have to validate the research. Remember what I told you a journey map is? It's a visual representation. You're probably thinking, wow, Jeri, how do we know when this is done? That's when you know it's done. Remember I told you your world in 3M, Post-it notes, lots of different colors, representing lots of different interaction points. You can see on the left, we looked at attitudes, experience, people, things, and systems. And we put it together. Okay? This happened to show areas to prioritize that they immediately said they want to validate with the customer on specific interaction points. I talked about internal versus external and what happens on journey mapping. There's a lot of confusion that says, well, don't people do this every day internally in our company and map out journeys? The answer is companies have a lot of people who put together process maps, but they don't necessarily look at an interface point of where it is with the customer. So the difference between the two is process maps are about a company. Journey maps are about the customer. Process maps describe internal processes. Journey maps describe the customer experience, what they're looking at. Terms and jargon, journey maps go in the customer's language, especially like emotions. Those are the customer's language. And then process maps look at, you have people, mapping specialists. Journey maps are all groups involved in what is the customer experience. All right, questions up until this point? Now, I know everybody's looking at me and saying, Jeri, this seems so laborious and so hard, and will we ever get these done? Well, you have to ask yourself, how important is it that you put these together relative to all the battlefield questions and the importance of the experience in and of itself. So how do we put these together? Here's what it looks like. Using the voice of the customer, you have 3 choices to make: good, better, best. It's all about how in-depth you want to get in building your journey map. A good effort is qualitative. A better is qualitative to identify touch points, followed by quantitative. The best approach is build your journey maps and use data and immediately go to a quantitative approach to look at those numbers. Is one better than the other? It's more important to me you get them done than it is to look at how much time you're going to invest and move them forward. Quantitative. Ideal methodology is ask customers to journal through the experience. You don't need a large sample size, or the second choice is do in-depth interviews to make it happen. But again, you're looking at what you said was the experience. Now you're validating and saying, what is the experience the customer wants, and where do we start to find gaps? There's the qualitative side of it, where we talked about the different areas on the map. Checkout, expectation, 3 minutes. The touch point. One of them was friends and family. Here's the description of it. And I can guarantee you this. You build one journey map and the rest of them become very simple. The first one's going to be the hardest because everybody's going to look at it and say, is this right, and are willing to make investments based upon how you put it together. After that, it becomes a very rigorous process because you've learned what works for your organization. Qualitative. We talked about you have moments of truth. And we talked about putting verbatims on it, on your map. Moments of truth. Moments of truth have been around for how long? A long time. There's nothing new about a moment of truth. Been around for a long time. There's our quantitative. We talked about importance versus satisfaction. Most typically done on a 10-point scale. Depending on if it's an emotional response, you can make the scale wider. Different ways by which to judge. Are we making a bigger investment, or we make a less investment, or we have what we call a bright spot? There's our customer effort score I talked about as part of it. And there's our segmentation outputs. So those are the different levels of putting together the journey map and the most critical items of it. So it doesn't matter which type it is. They all follow the same process. It's just the content within or the business issue we're trying to attack is different.
Can you talk a little bit about how you go from the Post-its to really the one-slide journey map? Are those the Post-its? Are you getting general themes to put on there?
Yes. So what's happening is you're looking at how you think the internal process works. And so that's why you do it internally, and you just translate that to the research you do. So if you start with scheduling an appointment, you believe it should happen in 3 minutes, it's what's most important, you're going to validate that with the customer and just say, when scheduling an appointment, how long do you expect it to take? And that's how you're going to start transferring all those touch points over to validation with the customer. So that's why you do it first internally to look at it. You don't start the customer with a blank slate and say, let's walk through this. Now, the only time that happens, but you won't get standards-based behavior, is that you can do focus groups and never do an internal exercise with the customer and bring together a group of customers, a focus group, and say, I want you to map out the whole process for how you're making a buy decision. But remember, that's qualitative, and what did I say a journey map is not? It's not a replacement for the quantitative effort. But that is a technique that works quite well. You just bring a focus group together and say, let's map it out. But by then, you're going to ask them to validate, here's what the internal part of the organization thought, and present that, and then let them react to that versus starting from a blank slate. Okay? All right. How much time do we have? We got about 20 minutes. Okay, so we're going to help Penn. We got 20 minutes left. We're going to help Penn.
It'll take more than that.
Now, we have 20 minutes with questions or 20 minutes until we're done. That's a question for Jen. We have 20 minutes with questions or 20 minutes?
20 minutes till we're done, 15 minutes.
We got 15 minutes. All right, we're going to help Penn for a second. We're going to do touch points up top, and we're going to talk about this journey map. I'm going to go back to this one, and I want to help Penn for a second. All right. If we're going to help Penn, we're going to go through 4 stages: awareness, research, choice reduction, and purchase. The business issue for Penn is they want everybody to come to the meetings, and they don't know what to do when they make them aware. What are the sources of awareness, and how do you reduce it down to say, this is where we're going to go? So the question I have is, we won't go through this with Post-it notes. We'll just sort of talk about it so you can see how this works. But we're at stage 1 of the journey map, awareness. What we're doing is we're identifying for Penn these left-hand sides. What are all the ways that you become aware of Penn? And Penn, by saying, what are all the ways they should be making individuals aware of these meetings? What are all the different sources that they should be using? Here comes the big Post-it note. Here it comes. The biggest Post-it note we can get. It's on its way. All right, so we're going to help Penn out. Take a minute to think about this, and what are all the ways. So let's just stay at the first stage of awareness. So what we're doing is we're filling the top, and we're saying if Penn wants to increase the number of people who come to meetings, that's their business issue. What are all the techniques they must use to reach folks to become aware? All the stages of awareness, what are they? Email. Social media. And which areas of social media? We got LinkedIn. Any others? The web page. And that's the company.
So social media, how about Twitter? I know Brian uses Twitter.
We got Twitter. We've got Facebook. Other ways they make individuals aware of the Penn meetings. We have word of mouth.
Yeah, schedules, pre-scheduling in advance.
Schedules in advance. Okay? Others. Look at what are all the possible ways they can make individuals aware of Penn meetings? Mailings. Community calendar. I'm sorry? Broadcast media.
Sometimes there's professional newspapers or
We got professional newspapers.
flyers.
We got flyers.
Like what we got today to pass out to our businesses.
We've got some postcards. Any others?
Co-market with other organizations.
You can co-market with other organizations.
Maximize presenter networks. Marketing, if you will, of the event.
Presenter networks. So you can co-market.
So is the intent of this stage to just simply throw out as many different ways that you could possibly advertise anything?
The intent of the stage, the question was, is the intent of the awareness stage to throw out everything conceivably that could be a way you learn? And the answer is yes. We are internally talking about this and saying, what are all the ways one might learn and become aware of a Penn meeting? So it's not a process of reduction yet. So this is the first stage.
Maybe connect with local universities and
We have connect with local universities. Okay, so I'm going to, go ahead.
The chamber, with what we're going through, the community awareness through the DMC Journey to Growth, that can be all a part of the future of quality within our community.
Okay, so I'm going to have you take a look and say, we've got this long list, and I'm going to ask you one thing. Do you think everybody is going to want to learn from the same channels you just gave us? So now we got the one shoe, doesn't fit all right? And then we've got the next area. Everybody's going to look at this list and say, is this cost effective based upon the value everybody expects to receive? Some of these channels might be higher value than others, but we don't know that. So the second stage we go through is we say, we're going to look at this, and all these people are going to go through and research Penn some type. So we went through awareness. The next thing is you're going to research this. I've become aware. Now which of these are you most likely to use to research Penn? I found out about Penn from mailings. Likelihood I'm going to do additional research. If I was, where am I going to do it at? Web page. So let's just play this through for a couple of more minutes so you can see how this works. So the web page might be one area that's most important. You can see in making a purchase decision, because you are ultimately making a buy decision, right? Because it's a choice between Penn or something else. You're going to go through a process of choice reduction. Where might you look for choice reduction? So you went through the web page, but right might be where it's most important you go through choice reduction. Go ahead.
just for clarity, so choice reduction, what's determining our choice?
Right. You haven't made the decision yet, but you need more information. You need to reduce choice reduction in saying, where am I going to get information to ultimately say, I've learned about it, I did research, but now they have to focus on narrowing it down to 2 to 3 areas that you're going to use for choice reduction to say, yeah, I went out and looked at it, now I've reduced my choices. I could go to Penn as a place, but I could go somewhere else, I could go somewhere else, I could go somewhere else with the limits of my time. So this is how I became aware. I did research by a web page. Now I have to reduce all my choices to say one versus another. Why would I go to Penn? Because I'm trying to get more people at my meetings. What's the sources I use to reduce my choices to say Penn is the right place to go?
You have to ask the customers how they value the different choices.
Okay, so one might be the content of value, cost, time, Okay? So what I did on this is I said Penn wants to increase their meetings. I looked at all the sources, but chances are you may have said way up front, where else could I get the same value as Penn? Where else might I go? And so you're going to go through a reduction here on choices. And the final thing that's going to happen is ultimately you're going to make a selection. You're going to choose, I'm going to go to Penn versus someplace else. How ultimately might you make that decision? So if you're saying, geez, Jen, I can go to a lot of different places besides Penn to learn about journey mapping. Ultimately, how would you make that decision? To make the last selection. Yes?
Depending on where you want to go, like if it's in Florida or it's depending on where you want to go.
So yep. So it might be attraction. The answer was it might be a choice to go someplace you want to go because it's location-wise, it's here. So ultimately, I've done all this research, but say I'm going to make a buy decision based upon where it is. Yes?
I might ask my colleagues or people that I know have participated in like things.
So you might make that ultimate decision, that purchase decision based upon way up front where we talked about the battlefield and how many of our decisions are made from asking colleagues and friends. So see, Jen can go through this whole process of the purchase journey you go through and find out how it's different by talking to other people. But what we've done is we've started to fuel the internal. We would have Post-it notes, we would have attitudes, we would have a lot of different things, but that's how we'd be able to test it. So that's how this starts to work internally. All right. We got 10 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up so we can have questions. And let's see what else we might have at the end. So we've went through customer effort score, segmentations. We've helped them. And our last wuzzle, box office. And what comes with box office? No. We're much too more fun for that. What comes with box office is you get a bottle of wine that shows how the company did manage the journey expectation. They put on top of it a little explanation of why you want this wine versus others because of the value of it. So this company's done a nice job, is what I'm saying. They're starting to make it very prevalent by understanding the journey one goes through. At that point, I am done, and you are? Brian. You are the proud owner of the box office gift at the next movie theater at home.